Hey everybody, this is Dream, and today we have a nice little, large 12-game Major League Baseball slate for you. But before I get started, can you guys smash the like and subscribe button? It helps the channel out. Really do appreciate it. This slate is kind of interesting. We do have some weather concerns in this one. If we look at the weather, the Philadelphia-Washington game has some risk. The Pittsburgh New York Yankees game has risk. The Houston Cleveland game has risk, and the Kansas City Atlanta game all have risk. Obviously, those southeastern coast games are definitely somewhat in jeopardy due to the hurricane. So this is a very interesting slate, though. Looking at our pitching, we do have some uh, kind of high risk, high reward type pitching slate. There's not a lot of guys that I just love that jump off the page other than Carlos Rodon. He has the best matchup and situation and high strikeouts potential today. And he's probably my favorite pitcher here. He's very close to me a core play, though I'm not going to make him one because there's a bunch of guys that are kind of decent, but not in great spots here. And those would be Jacob deGrom here for Texas. Now, he's only pitched 2 games, and he has struggled a little bit, but he didn't go very deep in the innings. So he's got good strikeout potential today, especially if he can get some more innings. But we don't know how many pitches he'll end up getting. So 50 to 60, probably the most likely. His price point is decent though, so he's definitely worth a look there. Pavetta, um, where'd he go? Pavetta for Boston has an interesting match against Tampa Bay, though I do like some Tampa Bay bats. He does have some potential today as he's been decent against them this season. Luis Castillo is coming off the injured list, I should say, and um, he does have some potential today if he gets a fair amount of innings. He is a little bit pricey though for that risk, and so he's not a must play by any stretch of imagination. Pablo Lopez also looks kind of decent for Minnesota, though he does have a tougher matchup against Baltimore. However, he did have a good game against them the last time he pitched against them and had 7 strikeouts, so he's definitely capable of a solid game here. The other guy that I can look at that is low owned is going to be Sean Manaea. Now, he does have a tougher matchup here. Where'd he go? For the Mets against Milwaukee, but he is capable of a solid game, and his strikeout stuff has been pretty good lately, and he's got a good situation for that. He's also been a pretty fair scoring pitcher lately, so I think he's in a great spot. Looking at our catchers here, we do like Will Smith. He is expensive, though, as this game is in Colorado, so that's definitely going to boost the Dodgers' pricing, which is definitely crazy today. So he's definitely worth a look, but my gosh, I don't like paying over $5,000 for him usually. William Contreras also looks decent. He's similarly priced, but has more upside, and he's priced better, so he's definitely worth a look here with a home run potential. Austin Wells is kind of a cheap play here for the Yankees. Though he has struggled some this season, he does have good metrics today, so he's definitely worth taking a look at. The ownership here is entirely different, though, with Jonah Heim and Alejandro Kirk getting the most ownership. So you definitely probably want to go contrarian at this position. Looking at first base, Otani is $8,000. I didn't think I've ever seen a player be $8,000 here, but look, if where he's in Colorado and he's been hitting home runs like crazy and stolen bases, and he's definitely capable of that in this scenario. Again, he in 10 games against Colorado this season, he has had 4 home runs, averaging 17 fantasy points a game. So I mean, it's gonna be hard to roster him at that price point, but he's definitely somebody you can consider. See here. Then we look at Bryce Harper. Uh, where do you go? See on this one? Or maybe I'm hitting the wrong point. Sorry, not Bryce Harper. Luis Arias. this, I'm messing up. So Luis Arias looks decent for San Diego today. He's been hitting the ball very well all season long. Not a lot of home run upside, but just good hitting metrics, and that gives him some utility on the slate. If we look at second base, we do like Brandon Lowe the best, um, as he has a good matchup here. Now, Tampa Bay does have some risk here, but I do think that I do like their bats decently against Pavetta, so he's definitely worth a look. He has had some ups and downs this season, but he's hitting the ball very well right now. And while his price is high, he's definitely a decent option. Jose Altuve, meanwhile, is a good contrarian play off of him of similar pricing and has more upside. I think he's a good spot today as well. And then Chris Morel is kind of a value play at this position. Can also play an outfield, but he does have some utility here as he's been decent at certain situations. Though he hasn't been playing every single game lately, so you got to make sure he's in the lineup. The ownership at this position, Marcus Semien and Kyle Farmer, is different, and I do think those guys definitely have some utility. So you could go chalky here, but you could also go a little bit contrarian. Looking at third base, the most chalky play is going to be Max Muncy, as he's in a fantastic matchup. Though he has struggled to score a lot of fantasy points the last few games. That price increase is definitely not ideal. Um, Meanwhile, Royce Lewis is the other guy that's going to have a lot of ownership here, and his price is nice and fair today and a decent matchup. Even though he hadn't hit home run in a few games, he's definitely capable of it, and so he's definitely worth a look. I wish he was hitting the ball a little bit better with that price reduction, I guess is why. Jose Ramirez, Jazz Chisholm Jr., and Ryan McMahon also in play at that position. Looking at shortstops, uh, Carlos Correa does jump off the page, is the best play at this position, and I don't really see any reason to divert from him, especially with his high ownership here. He's been hitting the ball pretty well this season. He has some good home run metrics today, and so he's definitely one of my favorite plays on the slate, and he's priced relatively fairly. Gunnar Henderson is the other guy you could look at as an alternative to him, though he's a lot more expensive and going to be in a much tougher situation. Looking at outfielders, Otani, Mookie Betts, Aaron Judge and Juan Soto are the top four overall plays. Of course, they're also the top most expensive options at the position. I don't think you have to use any of these guys. If I was going to use any of them, it would be Otani, but with that $8,000 price tag, that's definitely tough. But he actually fits better at first base anyway. But it's in a couple of value options here. We have Josh Lowe for Tampa Bay. Looks very solid today. Julio Rodriguez has been phenomenal for us at times, and he looks really good again now, especially against Oakland and Seattle. I also like Byron Buxton here for Minnesota in a pretty easy matchup for against Povich. I think he's got some utility here, though he's a little bit pricey. Andy Pages is an interesting play if he draws a start for the Dodgers. Merrill for San Diego has some interesting potential, and his price point is pretty fair here. I also like Wilyer Abreu as kind of a contrarian play at $3,700. Wyatt Langford also looks interesting for Texas. Randy Arzonia, oopsie, for Seattle also has some potential today. And then Chris Morel, who I already mentioned, can fit here as well. I think Michael Harris is kind of a sneaky play if Atlanta plays. I just really struggle to think that they end up playing that game. Cheap Hail Mary play at this position is Clase for Toronto, who is dirt cheap at $2,600. And his metrics are solid today, even though because he hit a home run, I guess, yesterday. But they look really solid, even though he struggled so far. But he's finally starting to hit the ball better the last few games, so maybe he's going to be a great option here. The ownership, Byron Buxton, Otani, Julio Rodriguez, and Mookie Betts. I do think looking at Buxton and Julio Rodriguez is definitely a top tier options there at that position. I would almost say that Julio is probably a core play for me, almost, at least very close to being one. So with that said, guys, thank you for liking.